Hello everyone. Welcome to another live. This is Jackie. I hope you can hear me. Yes, I think the mic is working just fine. Welcome. If this is your first time coming across one of my videos or one of my live streams, welcome. If you've been listening to my videos, welcome to you too as well. On this channel, I discuss narcissistic abuse, specifically recovery, and specifically for people who grew up with a narcissist or in a narcissistic family dynamic, and what it looked like for you, and to sort of help you recover from the effects of growing up in such a household and acknowledge your pain as well, because I feel like part of being around a narcissist so much is your pain and your feelings are denied constantly. So this is sort of a way I'm giving you a place where your feelings can be acknowledged and where you can be like, you know what, that did happen to me and it was terrible, and I wasn't given space or time or allowed to feel hurt when when my parent, my mother or my father said something hurtful to me. I wasn't even allowed to feel hurt before it was thrown back at me as, being too sensitive or whatever. So that's what I do here. That's what this platform is for. I want to help you acknowledge that pain. I mean, growing up, being raised by a narcissist is one of the toughest things a child can experience. I mean, just being around a narcissist as an adult is so draining. So now imagine, not only are you growing up with this from as a child, from childhood, but this is your parent, this is your caretaker, the person that's supposed to be, your source of comfort, the person you turn to, who shows you the ways of the world and helps nourish and supports you, a source for comfort. And the person you look up to, you feel they're supposed to be there for you, but often being raised by a narcissist or growing up in a family with a narcissist, as a child, your needs often get neglected. It's the exact opposite of what it's supposed to be. And this certainly, sets children up for failure or to be in abusive relationships in the future. And this is how, narcissists groom their children to be in abusive relationships or to be around toxic people for the rest of their life. Because at the stage where they're supposed to be teaching your child, this is good, this is bad, this is what's acceptable, this is not what's acceptable, they teach their children the exact opposite of everything and enabling them to almost, be codependent and attached to abusive personality types. In these homes with a narcissist, there is often very little or no stability or enforcement, both for material needs and emotional needs, especially emotional needs. A parent's supposed to always be looking out for you, but with a narcissist, they're looking out for themselves. And this leads to children adapting to abusive behavior, thinking that it's normal, and end up trauma bonded to abusive people who mimic their childhood later on in their adulthood. This is when they get, attached to people like this. They think abuse is normal. And covert, and they don't even realize that, that it's abuse. Again, they think it's normal. They don't see that there's something wrong with it, because covert narcissists operate passive aggressively. So they use very passive techniques like control, domination, punishment to teach their children to adapt to abuse. And this can show up in the form of dismissing, gaslighting, minimizing, triangulation, just to name a few of the little tools that the narcissists love to use. So basically, anything that allows them to hurt their children without ever having to take responsibility for it. Like they can make snide comments or say little things, but when they're called out on it, they'll be like, no, you're too sensitive, I didn't say that, no, that's not what I meant, you're taking it the wrong way, where they want to hurt you, but they never want to be called out, like, okay, that was, such a shitty thing to say, you're not supposed to say that. They never want to take accountability for their abusive behavior. And because at a stage where they're supposed to receive positive affirmations from your parents and positive reinforcements, things like that, you don't get that. These children end up growing up craving validation and praise, which they never received as children, and it sets them up to be around people who they'll constantly be craving this validation from, which is already unhealthy. And they do, like I said, it's very covert because they do all these horrible things and disguise it as, I'm just looking out for you. They'll say, make comments like, oh, you're getting fat, you should stop eating. I just say that because I'm looking out for it. Or you're too sensitive. Or even, I was just joking. Why do you have to take things so seriously? To avoid the responsibility. And this ends up harming and destroying their child in so many ways. It erodes their self-esteem, their self-worth, their value. They never feel like their feelings are valid, like they can speak up about things that hurt them. They feel like it's their job to put up with abuse and hurt, when it's not true. It really distorts their children's thinking and the way of acting and the way they behave. Because it's like, okay, I will hurt you, but you're not supposed to say that I'm hurting you. You're supposed to pretend that it's good, even though it hurts. Pretend that it's good and pretend that it's your fault that I'm hurting you. You know what I mean? That's why it's narcissism. It's such a selfish way of doing things. They can't even own up to their abusive behaviors and their toxic ways. And in public, these parents love to portray the image of the perfect family, like they're this caring parent. They play into stereotypes, like parents are supposed to always be looking out for their children, so they play into those stereotypes when they're doing the exact opposite. And it can be very confusing for children, especially if they're at a young age, because they have two versions of their parents that they have to sort of navigate with. The one that's in public, that will act loving and caring and even praise their children or brag about their children. Like, oh yes, Emma got an A+ in math or whatever. But when Emma told you this as the parent, you pretended like it didn't exist, like you didn't hear anything. And yet now you're here bragging to people about it. Like and they do that so often and so annoying. So why do they do this? Why do they hurt their own children in such a way, other than the fact that obviously they're narcissists and hurting people is like basically all they do? The simple answer is they're grooming their children to be future supply. They are trying to secure their supply to make sure they never run out of it. And the best way to do it is to make sure your own children, that you birthed or helped birth, are the ones that will continue to give you the supply you need. To a narcissist, it all boils down to supply. Supply is essentially their identity, their life force, and without the supply, they don't exist. Without people telling them how amazing, great, wonderful they are, how will they know they exist? A narcissist does not know they exist unless they have 50,000 people telling them, oh, you're still great, for doing absolutely nothing. And so this grooming of becoming supply, these children end up growing up with cognitive dissonance because they were taught from a young age that life and the world works in one way when oftentimes operates in the exact opposite way. Their world revolved around pleasing the narcissist and being a people pleaser and putting other people before yourself, things like that. And when they go out into the real world with that type of behavior, you're taken advantage of so much. And you honestly have to rewire yourself to be able to adapt into the real world. And it's not always easy. And that's how they end up in abusive relationships or around toxic people, because that's where they feel comfortable, because that's what they grew up with. Again, they have been groomed to be supply. So if they go out into they will have multiple narcissists that are drawn to them because they portray the behavior that exactly a narcissist would want. So you might have a narcissistic parent at home, go to school, you will essentially attract another narcissist. Go to work, you will attract another narcissist. This, that, and the other. You will play into that narcissistic dynamic because you were essentially prepped to be prey for a narcissist, which is very sad. Like, how can your parent, teach you to be a victim of a horrible person? That's exactly what they do. They teach their children how to play into toxicity and how to, you know, play into a toxic, abusive dynamic simply because they want to make sure that they can continue being toxic and they can continue using their children to play into their own toxic dynamic. It's very sad. And that's why it is so important to address this trauma and heal for yourself, for your future. However, the recovery isn't always easy, but it's so worth it. And it does take time. It really does. But you have to hang in there and keep up with the process. It's quite a journey, but it's completely worth it. And you need to first learn how to respect and love yourself and put yourself first and put up solid boundaries and stop putting up with this toxic, abusive behavior. Focus on your positive traits, what makes you unique, what makes you special. Create great self-talk with yourself and acknowledge your wins and advantages. And learn as much as you can about the narcissist, about abuse, the power dynamic of narcissism, how to protect yourself against them, methods like gray rock and no contact, things like that. Because the more you know, the more you can spot this abusive behavior in your parents and other people, and make sure you separate yourself from them to protect yourself and your energy and your, yeah. And also, do not be afraid to seek professional help. I feel like it's never been easier to find a professional you can talk to about this. Everyone's been talking about narcissism. It's out there, narcissistic abuse. So it will really help to find a professional you can talk to who understand what you've been through and will help you will walk you through the steps of healing and will be sort of like a guide for you. So if you can get a professional, please do. Yeah, so that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you find that helpful.